And can you talk about what it was like working at pre-IPO? We've had a guest before who've worked at Poshmark as well as Bill.com, kind of some pre-IPO companies, and seen the company go through IPO and how hypergrowth was like prior to the IPO. What was your experience at Uber for our viewers?
Yeah, it was they like to call it like controlled chaos. Things were
Mhm.
moving really fast. I remember one day one of the managers called me over and said, look, and told me to look at the dashboard of their growth. And he said, you see this last 3 months growth, that's one lift. So we grew one
Wow.
lift in 3 months. So like things are going really fast. And people were trying to figure out like processes to manage the growth so that, headcount can only grow so fast, but if there's ways to manage the growth without headcount, then they're trying to figure out ways to put that in place. And none of them always works, and it sometimes like things just seem very unorganized.
No, and I agree with you. Similar to me, I worked at Google X before, and I saw what it was. And Google X is like the research division of Google, so kind of like the Waymos of the startup companies of Alphabet. So I've seen what hypergrowth was like, where there's no procedures, processes. You just got to figure it out, and that's very hard to do, especially when everyone is just trying to do a good job, but you don't know what to do. There's so many things that are on fire basically. So I completely understand what that was like, working there. And then were you able to basically, can you talk about what you actually did for Uber, Ben?
Yeah, so since I did kind of like creating online training courses at Microsoft, there was a role at Uber on their onboarding team that would train all the new engineers that joined. So the role
Mm,
was to um, create a bunch of training material and then give that material to kind of like the more senior engineers and have those senior engineers teach the material because Uber was like a global company that had
yeah.
offices in like SF, Seattle, Amsterdam, India. So you can't just hire one person to teach everything. We had to kind of train people at each remote site to become like an instructor, and then they would onboard the people who joined their site. So it was a bunch of creating like a bunch of training material and teaching the engineers how to teach, and that's not their day job to teach. Their engineers, and then making sure all the curriculum gets updated and we're teaching the latest stuff because a lot of the training is on internal tooling that doesn't exist anywhere else.
Oh, that's so fascinating. Because what were you guys teaching them with regards to internal tooling? Because I think a lot of times most big tech companies, right, you are subject to a lot of the internal tooling, right? You can't really take what you have there to another company. What types of things were you teaching with internal tooling? Was it just like the tech stack? What was going on there?
Yeah, we were explaining the microservice architecture. We were explaining like why we came up with this architecture and how it was kind of it enabled each person to own their own microservice so that it was easier to break things apart and have people work at the same time. We talked about like if you want to like spin up a database, you go to this database team's product and you can use that internally. Um, there were there was like this thing where basically you could see every Uber car driving around. So yeah, it's like a lot of internal tools. That people would need just to do their J job. Just like how do you publish code, put it on, deploy it, have it live.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's good you guys had that. I've noticed during my stints at Meta, as well as at Google, was that most the internal tooling was actually very good, and there's always a place for documentation. Like at Google, we had something called MoMA, and that's where all the intro documentation was housed. Similar at Meta, where everything was housed kind of on a feed. So I've noticed that for these companies to reach kind of hypergrowth and a lot of scale, it's they need to have the internal tooling. So